Can you help our audience understand what are the exact cardiovascular conditions that can be reversed using plant-based nutrition? So high cholesterol, hypertension, coronary artery disease, peripheral arterial disease, are those all yes, no?
They're all yes. So when we look at starting as far as with stroke, we look at the incidence of high blood pressure, we look at peripheral vascular disease. So going back into the 1950s, there was a guy who some folks may know named Nathan Pritikin. And so when he was diagnosed with coronary disease in the 1950s, basically he adopted the diet that epidemiologic studies, which means observational ones, just seeing how individuals do, and looking at whole food plant-based diet, that they had an absence of coronary disease. He adopted that and felt good. And all of a sudden he reversed his disease based upon the testing available at that time. He ran with the ball at that point. He wasn't a physician, but he began testing primarily in patients with peripheral vascular disease, housing them in the VA inside Long Beach and finding that beyond a shadow of a doubt that they improved their activity, able to walk further, their blood flow to their legs improved. And so we know this beyond a shadow of a doubt in terms of the role of peripheral vascular disease. The one thing that's important is that it's one disease. So when we talk about coronary artery disease, that is disease on the heart muscle. We talk about stroke, that's disease in the vessels leading to the brain. When we speak to peripheral vascular disease, that's disease in the vessels to the extremities. When we speak about erectile dysfunction and impotence, that's disease leading to the male organs, reproductive organs. And so this is one disease process that's there that we can reverse, and we can stay that through decreasing the inflammation, decreasing the stress that the arteries are under, and that's through nutrition.
Yeah, I love the fact that you talk about cardiovascular disease as basically being one condition, right? And it's a question of, does that condition affect your heart? Does it affect your sexual organs? Does it affect your brain? Which tissue does it reside in? Because every time cardiovascular disease affects a particular tissue, that condition is given a new name, and it can be kind of confusing because now there's this whole long list of names. But in reality, it's the same pathological process. It's the same, underlying disease mechanism that's causing it every single time. So you mentioned nitrate-rich vegetables, and I'm glad you brought that up because, nitrate-rich vegetables have a very specific antihypertensive or anti-high blood pressure effect. So can you go into a little bit of detail here about what do they do, how do they act, and what vegetables can people actually consume to increase their nitrate content?
Yeah, so that's a great point. And so it's your dark green leafy vegetables tend to be in your cruciferous form. Now, the cruciferous are the ones that have kind of like a flowery leaf that's there, your kale and broccoli and things of that nature. They have something called isothiocyanates that are there that get released, and they're anti-cancer forming. Here's the crazy part, guys, about this that we know, is that, and T. Colin Campbell breaks this down in his book Whole, really about the reductionist model, about kind of saying, okay, I want to pinpoint something that's going to be effective here. But really all these foods impact everything, whether or not we're speaking in terms of Alzheimer's, whether or not we're speaking in terms of cancer, malignancy, whether or not we're speaking in terms of cardiovascular events, we're seeing that everything is interrelated. Our diabetes, all these things that are there. And so when these compounds are releasing, you have these dietary nitrates that lead to the vessel dilating, right? Because that inner lining of the vessel is active, it's alive, it's like that superhero secret sauce that's there. And when that endothelium is intact, it's going to expand, it's going to narrow, it's going to do all the things it needs to maintain a healthful state. When that area gets damaged, then now you lose that ability, and now it becomes permeable to atherosclerotic process that propagates and leads to all of the adverse events. And so when we eat these foods that now not only heals that endothelium, it regresses the plaque that's there, it allows for the dilatation by distributing this nitric oxide, that's value add, that's decreasing our burden of disease, which is really the main issue. 80% of chronic disease in the U.S. is preventable.
So you work with a lot of people on helping them make lifestyle change. What is the number one challenge that you see people face, and how would you recommend they overcome that challenge?
I wish there were just one. I think there's several. I think number one, I think if I had to say one, I probably would say it's habit, right? I think that it's habit. I think that where you grow up eating food that you become emotionally connected to, you now have this history and this layer upon layer of emotions attached to it. I had a patient just today, and this will give you an example, who had done exceptionally well. I saw her in a cath lab. I pointed her towards eating a whole food plant-based diet. She's done phenomenally. Her blood sugars normalized. She became symptom-free. And I saw her back today a year later, and she said that she's hit rough times. She had a lot of stress at work. And she said, I know, doc, I know what you're going to tell me, but I went to the cookie dough. I went to this, and I started eating that stuff again. My blood sugar shot back up. I started feeling poorly. And she said, I know what I need to do because I know I did it before and how great I felt. And the point is that stress is a major impetus, because what happens is when someone gets stressed, they revert back to those old habits, those old behaviors, that unless you're consistent in building new relationships with food, unless you're surrounding yourself with support of individuals who are like-minded, who can help you and point through the mirror neurons, and you're seeing other people around you who are also along the same lines of trying to eat healthfully. They're trying to live that life that's going to prepare their body for success, then it's easy to revert back. And that's a big challenge. Individuals may buy into what I'm saying inside my clinic, and they go home amidst a bunch of other people, friends and family, who are telling them a little bit won't hurt. They go out and in the community, they have zero resources. They're going out and they find that food is cheaper if it's ultra processed and animal because it's subsidized by the government, and the foods that are healthful, they find it's more expensive, at least to them in their perception, because they don't know how to prepare it inexpensively, and realize that, yes, I can buy in bulk, I can get foods, and it's not more expensive, it's actually cheaper. And so that's a big challenge, is the knowledge, it's the habit, and it's as far as the socialization, I believe, and it's so many things that come into play. And so that's why one of my major goals is, number one, is how do we change our urban communities? How do we bring out this new social area of support for folks that they can kind of gather? And you guys have done tremendously with that, right? That now the world can be connected without being in close proximity. Now I can have that support with someone in Costa Rica, right? That's huge. And I'm inside of California. That's huge. And so we have to use technology in order to bridge these gaps that folks are facing right now.